Hey, just to clear up some of the confusion I've been seeing, I want to state on the record that I am in fact a dude. I know the new character design probably tripped y'all up with the long eyelashes and the overgrown cheek hair, but yes, I am decidedly a male individual. Why does that matter? Well, frankly, it shouldn't. But apparently, only dudes are allowed to have meaningful opinions about the portrayal of women in One Piece or in any media that's ever been made ever. So I just wanted to cover my ass a bit before the cops come to revoke my feminist card. Yes, I have one of those. Look, if there was ever an opportune time to discuss my mixed feelings over One Piece's female characters, I think the island where women take 98% of the cast is probably the best place to do it. But before all that, let's talk about a man. So, Luffy finds himself on Amazon Lily, fresh off the coattails of everyone's metaphorical demise, and you know what? Kudos to the author for lightening the mood here. Other series probably would have milked in the pain and suffering a little bit longer, but One Piece is a story about perseverance, and it's well within its wheelhouse to use jokes to mask all that trauma. And that's precisely what Luffy does. He gets back on his feet, gets run down by a pig, and goes through his first acid trip when a bunch of shrooms start feeding on his corpse. And between all this, he's cracking jokes and acting like his regular goofball self, which understandably might feel kinda tone deaf given all of the Saba Odi nonsense. But this is where the acting becomes key, my friends. There's a very distinct strain to Luffy's positivity here. Like he needs to distract himself lest he gets overwhelmed by all the shame and grief that he's not typically used to feeling. And honestly, I kind of vibe with this character direction. Make no mistake, Luffy hasn't given up. Finding his friends is still his top priority, but rather than let himself get consumed by revenge, hatred, and other edgy emotions, Luffy chooses the path of goodwill, fully confident in the wisdom of his V card. Unfortunately, as much as I love the little guy, Luffy can only carry the series so far on his own. He'll be the first to admit that he needs other people to lean on in order to do the things that he can't. And who better to lean on here than hundreds of beautiful Amazonian women who are all just eager to emasculate and kill you. Oops, sorry, I wrote that line with my other head. Seriously though, I am very pleased by how incredibly non-fetishy this island is. Maybe the recent influx of isekai slop is clouding my judgment here, but I feel like a lesser series would have used Amazon Lily as an excuse to flaunt tits and ass in your face and force Luffy into some harem shit like you might find in Sentai Animation's back catalog. But no, for the most part, One Piece maintains its integrity. Like, even when Margaret and her girlies take Luffy's corpse to get cleaned and all the ladies start marveling over his manhood, it's surprisingly presented very unsexily. There's no sus camera angles or boing boing sound effects to get your hormones going. It's all done for the sake of characterizing the culture and would really only be provocative if the show was targeting an audience of incredibly bricked up teenage boys. Oh, right. Well, in addition to not being fucking weird about women, I also appreciate that they're allowed to be just a little bit shitty. Luffy broadcasts his nuts, and the ladies all kinda fuck with it. But when my guy starts complaining about the way they glammed up his outfit, they straight up just try to shank his ass. Now, this is obviously a very disproportionate response, and us audience members can recognize that. But to the series' credit, it never tries to attribute this as some kind of bio-essentialist women are emotional bullshit. It's just that these ladies are from a fundamentally different culture where a distinct lack of male socialization has made them irrationally fearful of them. Kind of like a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, but backwards. Anyway, Luffy takes Margaret out for a picnic, lays on the charm, and she's like, I thought the feelings I had for you were penis envy, but now I'm starting to think that maybe I just like you as a person. So, Margaret tries to undo years of generational misandry by helping Luffy not die. But that turns out to be quite difficult because the Empress of the island, who, surprise surprise, is a pirate warlord, is just about to return from their latest raid. We cut to some no-name marine general trying to force her into attending some guy's execution, and let me tell ya, of all the major character introductions I've seen so far, Boa Hancock's is definitely up there for one of my favorites. I saw her roll up onto the deck, and based off appearances alone, I initially was like, aw, what? This is just another one of Oda's baby-faced hourglass women, only slightly taller. I'm supposed to believe this walking stick figure is actually one of the most fearsome warlords of the sea? Then she does this shit. And I was like, yes, she's a horrible person! Up top! So yeah, Boa Hancock proves she's a legit pirate by telling Mustache Dude that she doesn't want to go, you can't make me, wow, 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 and then Medusifies his whole platoon. And her attitude doesn't stop there. When she returns to her palace, she gets into it with her tiny ass grandma, and Miss Cusco here tosses her out the fucking window. All of this is to say that Hammock is definitely not a good person. But oddly enough, that's actually how I ended up liking the lady. Not for the obvious reason, but because it's the first instance where the author uses fan service as a critical plot point. Look, let's just address the elephant in the room here. The way Ichiro Oda draws women is frustrating. I know it, and you know it. I've been in the fandom long enough to know everyone shits on him for only drawing female characters as top-heavy Nami clones, and I both agree and disagree with this. Agree on that, yes, pretty much every female character of relative importance is drawn in that same generically pretty sort of way. Doesn't matter if you're Nami, or Vivi, or Canis, or Kami, or even that one chick with the giant peepers. If you're meaningful to the story in some way and match the Japanese definition for heroine, you're probably going to be pretty darn hot. That being said, the idea that Oda only draws women in this body type is just flat out incorrect. Need I remind you that One Piece has graced us with many such elegant beauties, such as Miss Merry Christmas, Suru, and even that one boar lady? Like, I get the bar is being set to an absolute low here, but how many shonen series do you know where the female characters are allowed to look ugly, outlandish, or even just flat out monstrous? Not many, I would guess. The fact One Piece lets these women exist at all is an achievement that I feel deserves at least a pity clap. And I mean it when I say pity clap. Because I have started to notice a bit of an annoying trend here when deciding who gets to be pretty on this show. It took me a while to actually parse it together, but I think I finally cracked Oda's design formula. Basically, the more goofy and outrageous your personality is, the more you look like a cracked up ogre in hot yoga pants. The implication, of course, is that some women are just too pretty to be batshit crazy. And honestly, that's a very outdated design philosophy that I don't really fuck with. I'm not gonna pretend One Piece is some pinnacle of feminist literature when the author probably draws with his dick more than I'd like to admit. It just would be nice to see a little more variety, you know? But that's precisely why Boa Hancock's existence works in my opinion. She's an impossibly beautiful woman, but has the maturity of a 12-year-old girl playing Fortnite, or whatever the kids call it these days, and literally no one thinks she's cute for it. The show very much condemns Hancock for being a giant brat, and it's even the source of a lot of tension when she sends Luffy to his death and stonifies the best girls simply for aiding him. So a big gladiator fight ensues between Luffy and the Gorgonzola sisters, which he technically loses due to the green one flashing her tats at him. But then Hancock gives him an ultimatum where she says she'll either give him a boat or de-stone the girls. And you know what Luffy says?
そうかありがとうじゃあこいつら助けてくれるんだよな
One Piece. Can I please go through one arc where I don't have to glaze the MC? Anyway, the Empress calls off the battle and takes Luffy back to her quarters for some intimate one-on-one time. Side note, this is the funniest panel in the entire series. We get Hancock's tragic backstory about how she and her sisters were once child slaves to the most disgusting tools that ever lived, and that's why she hates fuckheads who dare take away her autonomy. And Luffy is like, damn girl, you're actually kind of valid for that. And Hancock is like, really? Well, thanks, Yeah, so for some reason, Hancock gets stricken by a sudden case of cardiac arrest, so they call in a specialist from another anime to try and diagnose her. And this glorious motherfucker actually goes...
それは恋の病でしょう。
Yup, you heard it here, folks. Luffy just pulled the canonically most beautiful woman in existence without even trying. I guess asexuals really are the hottest demographic in the entire world. Now, I must confess, I've known since about Alabasta that Handjob here was going to have the hots for Luffy. But I'm pleased to announce that having that prior knowledge did not make it any less funny for me. The fact I experienced this with the biggest shit-eating grin on my face should tell you all you need to know about my sense of humor. That being said, I did get a little worrisome when I thought about the implications here. Putting aside the fact that Hancock is technically an ephebophile and should be on a registry somewhere, the idea of taking a cruel, unforgiving pirate empress burned by the horrors of war and turning her into a sniveling, delusional simp kinda felt like a big fat L for the feminist movement. At least, that's how I felt initially. Despite revolving her entire life around a man now, I never got the sense that Hancock was losing herself as a person. She's still a bitch to the right people, as we soon find out in the Impel Down and Marineford arcs, and that tells me that Boa Handkerchief is still very much a woman with a lot of agency. And if being obsessed with a dude is how she wants to live her life, well, who am I to say no to that? And just to be clear, I have no illusions that Luffy would ever reciprocate her. I don't know what copium the shipping community is butt-chugging right now, but romance is just not in the books for this kid, nor do I think it ever will be. One Piece has always been more the type to value the pursuit of romance rather than the achievement of it. So unless the series is telling us that it's okay for teenage boys to try and bag 31-year-old women, I think we can safely put this in the just a joke category. So the Amazons come around, Luffy realizes his brother is literally on the chopping block, and Hancock uses her massive influence to smuggle him aboard a Navy ship, and they set sail for Impel Down. Anyway, that's my spiel on how One Piece is slightly more feminist than most battle shonens. I mean, considering that the next two arcs are going to be packed to the gills and testosterone propionate, I'm very glad that we at least had one storyline dedicated to looking at women respectfully. That being said, One Piece typically operates under the law of equivalent exchange, meaning if today's lesson was about embracing the mysterious, enigmatic species that society calls women, then tomorrow's lesson will be about a creature whose existence is just as equally baffling, but no less worthy of embracing. Until then, oh, come my way! You know, it's been like a million years since I've done the whole ask a question, give an answer thing, so why don't we go ahead and do one right now? Cool? Alright. So, which Shonen Jump series has the best female characters, and why is it Ichi the Witch? Drop your answer in the comments below, like and subscribe, and until then, stay tuned.